The British royal family have had a challenging 2024. Began with the King and the Princess of Wales announcing they'd been diagnosed with cancer. Plus, there's been family controversies and a widening of relations between Prince Harry and the rest of the royals. We look back now at their year. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady and a very happy Christmas to you all. On today's show, we're looking at how 2024 unfolded for the British royal family and what lies ahead for 2025. Let's meet our guests. Joining us from London is the royal editor, Sarah Hewson. Also in London is the journalist and broadcaster, Afua Hagen. And here with me in the studio is Norman Baker. He's a former UK Home Office minister. You're all very welcome to this Christmas Day edition of Roundtable. Sarah, I'll come to you. I hope you're having a better Christmas than Prince Andrew. All of these recent spy allegations. He's effectively been banished again, hasn't he?
Yes, the Duke of York is in exile for Christmas and having made the decision, and for once, I think Prince Andrew actually read the room and made the decision that it wouldn't be right for him to be joining the royal family at Sandringham for Christmas. For the last couple of years, he's been allowed to walk to St Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate with the rest of the family on Christmas Day, and that happened since his brother's ascension to the throne. But given the latest scandal surrounding him and his association with an alleged Chinese spy, Yang Zhengbo, then it has been decided that it wouldn't be appropriate for him to be there. And he decided with Sarah Ferguson, his former wife, who he shares Royal Lodge with, that he would stay away. So a rather lonely Christmas in isolation for the Duke of York, but very much the right thing to have done rather than to be bringing more ill repute on the royal family, which he seems to continually do.
Afua, King Charles must be at the end of his tether with his younger brother.
Oh, absolutely. He must be. And this was the year of the siege of Royal Lodge, where you have had both of the brothers at loggerheads over Prince Andrew remaining in Royal Lodge. He has managed to find what he says is legitimate funds to fund his stay there, to fund his security and the upkeep of Royal Lodge, which is quite high, £400,000 a year. It needs painting inside about. There's about £2 million worth of repairs to be done on Royal Lodge as well. But yes, King Charles III must absolutely be at the end of his tether with his brother, who stepped back as a working royal, has had all his titles stripped from him. And we know that he does deny all the allegations against him in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. But aside from that, if you look over at his life, he does have a reputation of having relationships and friendships with people who are a bit unscrupulous. And this is coming back to bite him on the bum again and again and again. And this is another example of that. So yes, King Charles III most definitely at the end of his tether. And like Sarah said, I think Prince Andrew for once read the room and said to himself, look, I'm only going to be a distraction if I'm at Sandringham this year. This is not what the royal family needs, and especially after 2024, which has been a tough one. So it's right for him to be on the back burner, to be in the background of the royal family and absolutely not front and centre.
Norman, how damaging have these revelations about an alleged Chinese spy been? I mean, someone at the very heart of the British establishment brought in and welcomed by Andrew.
Well, they're very damaging to Andrew personally, of course, but as Afua has just said, there's a long history. I set out in my book, actually, called And What Do You Do? The history of Andrew's relationships with dodgy people, autocrats, unpleasant people who, at home, are happy to torture and lock up their opponents, nasty people. And he's been associating with them for the last 20 years, including his time as trade envoy. And you have to conclude, because we've seen the curtain pulled back on some occasions, that he was pursuing matters for his own personal benefit rather than representing his country abroad. And you have to ask whether or not his relationships with his Chinese spy, who, by the way, described him as desperate in the information being released by the government, whether that was an attempt to get some money to support himself in Royal Lodge, which is, as Afua says, hugely expensive. But this goes beyond Andrew, because the part of the reason he's got away with this over 20 years is because there is no proper accountability for the royal family in this country. They are not subject to freedom of information in the same way as other elements of the public sector are. They don't have to list their gifts. If you're a member of Parliament or a minister, and I speak from personal experience, or a councillor, or someone who runs a health service...
It goes in the book.
It goes, you have to declare what you've got. You have to declare your gifts. There is no requirement for the royal family to declare whether they're given so-called personal gifts by dodgy people. We need to have a full list of all the gifts Andrew's been given, of all the money he's received from people abroad, and we need a full public inquiry from the Public Accounts Committee in the House of Commons to look at the whole issue of royal finances, which, frankly, are 200 years out of date.
Sarah, we've seen already today the royal family going to church in Sandringham, as you mentioned earlier. I'm guessing Charles will have said a personal prayer of thanks for a year of recovery, a year of cancer treatment, it's been a very difficult year, let's be frank.
I mean, it has been an incredibly difficult year, and the Annus Horribilis Mark II, you could say, starting right at the beginning on January the 17th, when we got the news that the Princess of Wales had been hospitalised, which was for what was described at the time as planned abdominal surgery. We now know that she was later diagnosed with cancer. King Charles, on the same day it emerged, was to undergo treatment for a benign prostate condition. Later, it turned out that he too had an unspecified form of cancer, and that took two of the most high-profile and senior members of the royal family out of action for a considerable amount of time. The year is ending on a much happier note, and it will be a very poignant Christmas for them all as they gather at Sandringham, reflecting on the events of the past 12 months. But certainly it has been incredibly difficult for all of them. The King and Kate dealing with their cancer diagnoses, and those around them who have had to step up and fill the gap.
And Afua, we saw a different way of communicating the royal family this year, didn't we? We saw Kate announcing what she was going through with a very personal video message, and then later in the year, when things were much improved for her on the health side of things, we saw a beautiful family video message. Is this the future of comms for the House of Windsor?
Yes, it is, definitely. I think kind of this year was the year when that had to happen, but it wasn't always the case. You know, as Sarah said, back at the beginning of the year on January 17th, we had both of the news that both King Charles III and the Princess of Wales had been hospitalised, but then the style of communication was quite different. I think initially Buckingham Palace and King Charles III were much more open about what was going on with their principal than perhaps Kensington Palace and the Princess of Wales. And then we had the hiccup with the Mother's Day picture, which turned out was digitally altered. And so there was a sense that the general public and royal watchers and royal fans kind of felt, well, hold on, do we have the accountability that we want and perhaps that we deserve because we pay for the royal family? Are we being told everything that we should? And of course, you know, we don't have the right to know the ins and outs of everybody's medical history. Of course we do not, whether they are the king or not. But there was an element of people feeling that perhaps the wool was being pulled over their eyes. And then on the other side, you had many conspiracy theories springing up from the dark corners of the internet and making its way to night television in the United States. And so I think the communication style of the royal households had to change because that's what was being demanded of them. And so yes, we saw the Princess of Wales in that video talking about the fact she had precancerous cells and going on to have preventative chemotherapy. And then you had that, you know, that 3-minute film, you know, a real in-depth portrait into the Wales family, which was filmed by videographer Will Warr, and a very different style than we've seen before of the family of 5. You know, you had Nana and Papa Middleton in there as well. well, and a real insight into their life, what they've been through over the previous 9 months. And then the Princess of Wales talking about looking forward to the future, saying that she was on the road to recovery and staying cancer free was now her goal. Never seen anything like that before. And it, like I said, it was a real intimate portrait. And I think that's how royal communications will continue into the future. But let's also remember, we are in a digital age, and this is the way that people are going to be communicating. And if the royal family want to stay relevant and want to stay relevant to younger people, this is the way that they have to do it.
And this is how they've been doing it. Let's just take a look at those royal videos we've seen from the House of Windsor this year.
In January, I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time, it was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present. My medical team therefore advised that I should undergo a course of preventative chemotherapy, and I'm now in the early stages of that treatment.
As the summer comes to an end, I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment. The last 9 months have been incredibly tough for us as a family. Life as you know it can change in an instant, and we've had to find a way to navigate the stormy waters and road unknown. The cancer journey is complex, scary, and unpredictable for everyone, especially those closest to you.
So, Norman, lots of very swish production and PR this year from the House of Windsor. Is the British royal family still relevant, do you think?
It's less relevant, I think. And if you look at the polling for young people in particular, they don't have an affinity for monarchy in the way that was the case in previous generations. I think the Queen, when she was on the throne, held the thing together. She was well respected across the generations. And in a sense, that was good for the royal family, but it also instilled a sense of rigidity, which meant that when she went, then that loyalty wasn't there in the same way. And we're seeing it unpicking a bit. I mean, clearly the members of the Windsor family are human like everybody else, and they're faulty like everybody else. And there are people who are doing well, not doing well. I mean, that's just how people are in any particular family. But, you can't pretend to be above everything else if you're just human as they are now coming across as human. So when you have these uses of the internet and uses of social media, then it shows the good and the bad, and that makes them less able to be respected as something on a pinnacle. I mean, we're now seeing this in different ways. Here's a little thing which appeared in one of the papers before Christmas. The number of people refusing honours in this country is now almost at an all-time high. People don't want OBEs and MBEs and everything else. It's been discredited. It sounds rather old-fashioned. I mean, what is the British Empire, for goodness sake? This kind of adherence to things that have been unchanged for decades, I think is now being challenged.
Sarah, just talk to me about the year Prince Harry has had. He's another huge character. He's sometimes in the family, sometimes he's not. Where does he stand at the end of 2024?
Well, look, any news like a cancer diagnosis can serve, and you would hope it would serve, to reunite a family. And there were glimmers of hope because Prince Harry jumped straight on a plane and headed to London from California to see his father immediately after he heard about his cancer diagnosis. But that was it. There have been multiple visits back to the UK by Prince Harry for charity events and for court appearances throughout the year. And yet at no point has he managed to spend any time with his father. And I think that tells us a lot. And then when you look at the relationship between Harry and his brother William, which is absolutely at rock bottom. Harry learned of his sister-in-law's diagnosis via the media in the same way that everybody else did, because there is a complete lack of trust between them. And it was kept very, very tightly. And there was no way that Prince Harry was going to be told beforehand for fear that that really important and sensitive news might leak. When he returned here for the funeral of his uncle, Lord Fellows, he and William were both in attendance, but couldn't have been further apart, sat at opposite sides of the church, no communication between them whatsoever. And as for Christmas, well, in recent years, we've always been given the steer that the King's door was always open to Harry and Meghan, and it was up to them should they wish to come back. You don't get that feeling this year. This Christmas, very much an important family gathering. And meanwhile, Harry, with his own family, many thousands of miles away, looking further apart than ever.
Afua, do you agree? Is the door closed on Harry and Meghan then?
I don't think the door has closed on Harry and Meghan just yet. I think it's very clear that they are living their lives. They're quite happy in Montecito in California. I do agree with Sarah that the communication between the brothers is minimal, if not non-existent, and their relationship is extremely fractured. And it is a shame that we have seen Harry in the UK so many times and hasn't really managed to spend much time with his father apart from on that fleeting visit when we first found out about the cancer diagnosis. Prince Harry has also made it really clear that he doesn't feel that it's safe to bring his wife and his children back to the United Kingdom because of the issues surrounding his security and their security as well. And I think because that is an ongoing issue, then we won't see them return to the United Kingdom and therefore won't see them joining the family for Christmas. But I still maintain that a reconciliation is possible. I don't know when and I don't know how, but I would never like to say that the door is closed on Harry and Meghan because they are, still part of the royal family. They may not be working royals, but in the sense of it being a family, they are still part of that family. So I don't ever believe that the door is fully closed on them.
Norman, what's your take on Prince Harry? Because he sometimes cuts a very strange figure. There was a time when the British public loved this fella. He was in the military, he served twice in Afghanistan, he could do no wrong. And now people can pretty much take him or leave him.
Well, I think he's cast his lot with Meghan and California, and I think he may come to regret that. I mean, she's clearly very happy where she is. I don't think he necessarily is, but he's burned his bridges. So I'm not sure he can come back very easily. But, this idea about security, I just find that extraordinary. I mean, look at the amount of violence there is in the United States. Look at the number of people killed by guns in the United States every day. And look at the number of shootings in schools and so on.
Doesn't happen here.
It doesn't happen here. So in what way is it safer to be in America than it is in the UK?
Very good point. Sarah, just looking ahead to 2025, what can royal watchers expect from the British royal family?
Well, I think the royal family will certainly be hoping that 2025 is a calmer and healthier year for all of its members. We had the King and Queen Camilla heading off to Australia and Samoa in the latter part of 2024. And we were told at the end of that tour to expect more in 2025, that the King would be returning to a more full programme of engagements and overseas activities. So that's positive news. As for the Princess of Wales, she's made a tentative return to work. She attended Trooping the Colour. She made a visit to the victims of the Southport attack and their families. She held her together at Christmas carol service, which was broadcast on Christmas Eve. And I think we'll start to see a little bit more of her in 2025. But I certainly think from what we've heard from the Princess of Wales, that there's been a process of re-evaluation. What really matters to her has come into sharp focus. Family has always come first for her and William, but I think we will see that being played out even more clearly in the year to come.
And Sarah, you spend so much time following the royals, reporting, interviewing them. Do you get a sense that Charles and Kate are now both in the clear, that there's really, really good prognosis for both of them?
Look, it's really hard to say, as anyone who has been on a cancer journey will know. The Princess of Wales has completed her chemotherapy. Now she is in that period of watching and waiting. For King Charles, his treatment continues. It was paused during his visit to Australia and Samoa, but has resumed again. And in fact, Prince William revealed a little shortly before Christmas when he told people that his father is fighting as hard as he can. He certainly wants to get back to work as normal. He doesn't want this diagnosis to stop him, coming as it did just 16 months into his reign and effectively stopping him in his tracks. It was deeply frustrating. And so I think we will see the King trying his best to take on as full a programme of engagements as possible. And we hope that there is much better news on the health front for both of them in 2025.
We wish them both the very best for the new year. Afua, just to you on the Princess of Wales, it's said that we learn a lot about people when adversity strikes. What did we learn about Kate this year?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We do learn a lot about people when adversity strikes, and also how much health is the greatest leveler, right? I think we learned definitely how much she values her privacy, and definitely how much she needed the time to turn into herself and to heal. We learn how much she values family. Sarah alluded to the fact there that she's perhaps had a reevaluation, excuse me. And when she put out that video in September, that was all about centered on family and how difficult it had been for them. And so I think we've definitely learned how much she values family, values her time with them, and knows that that's where our heart is, that's the most important thing. Yeah, definitely. I think we learned those things about her, and that when it comes to adversity, when she was faced with those challenges, she turned into her family to find the strength from them. And I think that will be a running theme throughout her work from now on. She has her early years project, which is all about making sure that young children have the best start in life. And I think that will remain to be her life's work and her life's mission. But I think family time will become the most important thing to her. And I think she's definitely discovered that in this year.
Norman, you said earlier about transparency.
Yes.
You'd like to see more from the royal family next year?
I think we're going to see more demands from Parliament in the light of this particular incident with Andrew and the spy. And we're really seeing editorials in the newspapers saying we want transparency. That's not going to go away. I think the royal family may have a difficult 2026. Personally, I wish Charles well. He's doing his best, as Sarah says, to get back on the road. He's 76. He's got cancer. He's trying to fulfil his duties. But I mean, the royal family's relying on him and Camilla and Princess Anne particularly. William is getting headlines calling on work-shy now in the newspapers. It doesn't look very good, and I think the attention of the press towards transparency and accountability will make it a difficult year for them coming forward.
Sarah, just looking ahead, can you see any way back for Andrew? I mean, is his reputation so tarnished now that Charles just will continue to keep him at arm's length?
I really think it is. And we had 2 documentaries on Netflix and Amazon Prime this year, regurgitating the Newsnight interview in all its gruesome detail. And then, of course, after the dust had settled on those, then these latest allegations around a Chinese spy. It seems that where Andrew is, there is a rogues gallery of friends in low places. And in most instances, it all comes down to money.
Yes.
And for that, he is an embarrassment to the royal family, and King Charles will have to keep him at arm's length. They have always maintained that he's still a member of the family, although he's not a working royal and he doesn't undertake any public duties, that he had been included in those family events, Easter Sunday, Christmas Day, for example. But this latest scandal, one step too far right before Christmas, leaving him at home alone in the cold.
Afua, how does Andrew always get it so wrong? I mean, we've got a guy here who hasn't put a foot right since the Falklands, and that was 1982.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a number of things here. I think he has terrible, terrible judgment. I think he has people around him who are either advising him incorrectly or who are advising him correctly, and he frankly just is not listening to. And I think there's also an element of greed. He's
Yes.
all about trying to make money and make sure that he has those connections to fund his lifestyle, to help fund Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York's lifestyle as well. And so I think all these things are a heady combination. And so he ends up in these situations where he's surrounded by dodgy elements all the time. And they are milking him, he is trying to milk them, and so on. So it continues. He's just stuck in this cycle.
Norman, is that the very heart of the Andrew problem? Greed?
I would say it's a compliment. I don't wish to be unkind to the man, but the conclusion you can only reach is based on arrogance, greed, and stupidity. Those 3 things together are a toxic combination, and they've led him to make some stupid decisions over the years which have embarrassed him and embarrassed the royal family more generally. But, you know, as I said to you, the lack of transparency goes beyond Andrew. It was only last year we found out, the year before, I think, that Charles was being given bags full of money, notes, in Harrods bags in a hotel as a kind of donation to one of his good causes. He looked like a mafia boss in that particular picture. We've got to get the same sort of rules of accountability and adherence to proper procedure, which you expect rightly from members of Parliament and from ministers. And the royal family has not been adhering to the same standards.
Sarah, I would imagine the King and the Princess of Wales will be very happy to say goodbye to 2024.
Absolutely. I mean, it is not a year upon which they'll look back with undiluted pleasure. To quote the late Queen, it has been exceptionally difficult with the health challenges. It was a year in which the world went mad with the crazy conspiracy theories around the Princess of Wales. And it was a year in which we saw two senior members of the royal family taken out of action and the rest of the family looking pretty thin on the ground. It was a remarkable year, we should say, for Queen Camilla to find herself front and centre leading the royal pack. If you can think back only a few years, that would have been unimaginable. But she has really had to step up, as had the Prince of Wales, while also trying to support his family. I think in 2025, they will hope for continued better health. But I think we will all be hoping as well for some kind of reconciliation between the King and his youngest son, Harry, because that is still one cause of great sadness for him, and particularly that he doesn't get to see his grandchildren in Montecito.
Sarah, Afua and Norman, thank you all so much for your insight on this one. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, thank you for watching and a very happy Christmas to you all.